Hello and welcome to this conversation on one of the latest trends that has actually hit the diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting space, and something about which we are all super excited. It's a great day at the Power of I today, a conference by Avatar. And the power of I here stands not only for inclusion, which is the topic of the day, but the role that the individual can play in bringing about this inclusion intentionally. And to talk about this and about what this amazing new development is in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I have with me Bhavani Balasubramanian, Chief Strategist, Diversity Evaluation at the Avatar Group. Welcome, Bhavani, and it's great to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you, Dr. Soundarya. It's my pleasure to be with you all today to discuss about the recent standard, the ISO 30415 on human resource management, diversity, inclusion.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is the big news that I think we all were waiting for. The fact that ISO, the International Standards Organization, has actually created a standard for the very first time on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Bhavani, what does this ISO 30415 actually stand for? What does it do?
Dr. Soundarya, the start of the decade had three major trends: the fourth industrial revolution, the job market disruption due to the pandemic and the remote work, and today the hybrid model, and a greater thrust on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And therefore, the need to redefine diversity, equity, and inclusion was a necessity for corporates and communities. So the ISO 30415 said it all. To quote Jim Lewis, the chair of the ISO Technical Committee, fair and equitable access to jobs and career paths, as well as opportunity for every employee to be heard and respected, involves deeply embedding the principles of diversity and inclusion in an organization's policies and practices. How beautifully laid out an objective and the purpose of the standard. It is a very comprehensive standard which has a holistic approach to DEI, policies, practices, procedures, and performance. It facilitates fairness and commitment to all with 11 prerequisites which have been beautifully defined in the framework. It values people at all levels to unleash the skills and the potential of people, and therefore has the benefit of closing the skills gap in society. This standard applies to four aspects: the human resource management life cycle, right from workforce planning, recruitment, onboarding, learning and development, performance assessment, succession planning, and cessation. The second aspect is delivery of products and services, respectful customer service, safe working conditions, respecting customer feedback, and so on. The third aspect is supply chain relationship, wherein contracting agreements take into account the DEI commitments and the feedback from the brand owner and the manufacturer is taken into account to comply with the DEI requirements of what they hold out to the external world. The last aspect is the involvement and the respect for stakeholders. The feedback from stakeholders, including whistleblowing, is given appropriate attention, and DEI objectives are rephrased and redefined to consider this valuable feedback. It is, in fact, Soundarya, a continuous improvement plan. And what happens when a person gets involved with the standard? He follows the plan, do, check, and review cycle on an ongoing basis. And this is what the standard broadly stands for as a beautiful framework for DEI.
Amazing. As you were mentioning about it, and as you were kind of going through the ways in which the ISO 30415 can, really provide that rigor, of process management to the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda of any organization. The first question that kind of strikes my mind, Bhavani, is how does an organization kind of get started on it? Do we look at individuals, first of all, kind of familiarizing themselves, with this? Is that the way to kind of begin the journey of getting an organization attuned and certified, by on the ISO 30415 standard?
You're right, Soundarya. It is actually the first step to implement any standard or framework is that individuals should get familiar and obviously get certified. I would even suggest that key personnel like the CHRO, the DEI lead, and other business leaders who are responsible, because the standard lays out individual responsibilities for DEI, should get accredited with this standard. And what I would suggest is it is applicable to all kinds of organizations. So individuals where the organization is not so mature should use this as a start point and use this as an important aspect to, first of all, lay down the requirements. And secondly, what they should do is to probably implement and have the framework and the requirements done in a proper methodical manner to make sure that they start adhering to the standard. It is easier when they are at the early stages. For advanced organizations, it would be useful for these people to do an assessment on an ongoing basis and suggest an improvement plan, which can then be put in place. So I believe that it is important and the first step for individuals to get certified.
Okay. So, at this momentous occasion where we are talking about the ISO 30415 guideline standard, which organizations can utilize to further strengthen their diversity, equity, and inclusion processes, I'm delighted that at Avatar, we will be offering the Avatar Certified Diversity Auditor course, which is the the course that actually certifies individuals and allows them to completely become familiar with the standard, what are all the different sections of it, and the fact that they would then be able to utilize their learnings, which of course comes from Avatar, an organization that has actually pioneered diversity, equity, and inclusion in India almost 2 decades ago, which therefore brings a lot of rigor in terms of the practicalities of how diversity, equity, and inclusion can really be implemented with the support of the ISO 30415 guideline standard. So the Avatar Certified Diversity Auditor course is, I think, a fantastic thing which all of us can go through, can get ourselves certified to move to the next level of organizational certification. And here's where, Bhavani, I want to ask you, I can see that it is absolutely essential for individuals to get certified on the ISO 30415 standard, because that is what will give them the ability to know how to move through the standard and use it as a tool to kind of really strengthen their processes. But what then happens in an organization? Why do you think an organization should get ISO certified in its DEI journey? What benefits do you think an organization would typically have? And one further corollary to that question, is this equally useful for all kinds of organizations?
First of all, congratulations on pioneering this initiative on the ISO 30415. And it's a delight to know that this initiative is being launched. And I'm happy to be part of this initiative. So when we talk about organizations, I'd like to draw some perspectives on benefits for organizations and then the kind of organizations which you had asked me to talk about. When we look at the benefits for organizations, there are three imperatives: the moral imperative, the economic imperative, and the legal imperative. So, talking about the moral imperative, as you are aware, environmental action, social impact, good governance. Environmental action, social impact, good governance are all the order of the day for corporates and communities. The ESG, which involves the 4 Ps, the planet, people, prosperity, and principles of governance, need to be addressed by organizations. Making inclusive workplaces and unleashing the potential of their people is top priority in the agenda of CEOs today, as we are all aware, and more focus because of the recent pandemic. The UN sustainable goals of gender parity, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, and reduced inequality and protection of human rights have all been dealt with by the standard. So following this standard would mean an authority to say that they have followed the UN development goals. The capital markets and the investors believe that following this standard is a statement of promise by organizations because it gives a clear line of sight of the policies, practices, processes, and the performance of DEI objectives, which gives them the confidence to associate with an organization. Looking at the legal imperative, much has been done by regulators to make sure that ESG is mandatory for organizations. SEBI has made it mandatory for all its registrants. And recently, I read that Canada has brought about this as a mandatory regulation and in specific requirement to the UK modern slavery legislation, which is also applicable here. When you look at the ILO, there are so many conventions which each country has tailored to its local regulations. Coming to India, SEBI has recently redefined the business responsibility statement into the business responsibility and sustainable reporting statement. So this statement is made mandatory for organizations from 22-23 and is made voluntary for the year 21-22. So
Okay.
it is the business responsibility and sustainability report which organizations will have to publish. And therefore, the legal imperative need not be elucidated further. When we look at the economic imperative, it is an enhancement of brand value. And as I said, a stamp of integrity as far as DEI objectives are concerned. And they hold out to the world, nothing more than saying that I have complied with the ISO standard. And I've confirmed to the recommendations thereof.
Okay.
The competitive advantage is the assurance of safety, the assurance to the world that there is no violation of human rights, and no exploitation of women and child labor gives all the confidence for investors and consumers to be associated with these organizations. Markets on health safety certification and ISO certification seems to be a proud publication by various MNCs. If you look at their reports, it very clearly gives this data on how many of their markets are certified in this manner. Conformity with these things obviously enhances brand value. So it is relevant that all these three objectives need to be kept in mind. You may ask me, what does it matter to organizations which are in a different environment? All organizations, irrespective of whether their size is small, medium, or large, benefit out of starting this journey, as we
Okay.
spoke earlier. In terms of sector, industry sector, services, any of these organizations, this standard adds value because it is all about people. The level
Okay.
of maturity of the organization is also critical because at the early stages of growth, this is something which could get built into their business strategy. At mature levels, it is a set of targets for improvement and certain specific goals to be achieved.
Okay.
Based on any type of the organization, whether it's a governmental organization, whether it's a public sector, private sector, or NGO, implementation of this standard is critical because it is all to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. If we look at listed companies, we spoke about the importance of this reporting. Overseas corporates who are in India have to
Okay.
anyway report about these requirements to their MNC headquarters. Export-oriented organizations would find better markets due to this conformity because they will be able to hold out, and that would be the differential edge for them to win over their competitors.
Okay.
Contract manufacturers
Okay.
would also be able to get a marketing edge and improve business by conformity to the standard. So the
Okay.
benefits are huge, Soundarya,
Got it.
and the efforts will not go a waste.
Okay, got it, Bhavani. And when you were speaking about, the actual benefits that accrue to an organization by, submitting to an ISO 30415 certification, where all your systems are checked, and there is actually an audit that is conducted to ensure that the data is in place, the processes are actually mapped to the standards, and everyone in the system is aware that this is there, that there is a standard to which we are accountable and we are responsible, and we are held accountable to actually what is mentioned in the standard. My thoughts went back to 2008 when Avatar first conducted a diversity, equity, and inclusion audit, in India for one of our very, very large MNC clients. And I think that was the time when we did our first audit. And, I would even say that that was probably the first time a diversity audit, a formal diversity audit, was even conducted in India. And from that point of time onwards, I recall the number of organizations who we have had an opportunity to, help with our diagnostics, where they have been able to understand what is going right, which all diversity strands are being adequately represented, how are the beneficiaries really feeling about the equity rigor that's there, as a result of the diversity agenda. All of that has led to several organizations today going on record that, that strategic input into their diversity, equity, and inclusion journey has really turned it around for them. Today, they know exactly where their money is going and which policy is actually delivering that discretionary effort, that better, robust problem solving, and that greater bouts of creativity, which is supposed to be the benefits that accrue from a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. So I know that besides these audits which Avatar has conducted, basis our own primary research, our own diversity, equity, and inclusion framework that we have utilized in all of these organizations that we have helped. I also would like to point out that the Working Mother and Avatar, best companies for women in India, which actually provides some of the most amazing benchmarks that you can see with our top 10 best companies list and the 100 best companies list, as well as the most inclusive companies index that we publish now year on year. I think Avatar is extremely well placed to be able to, converge this data richness, this ability to utilize the ISO 30415 as a standard and put together a very, very robust 360-degree offering that organizations can very, very happily, utilize in their journey of creating diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces.
What a purposeful objective. What a purposeful objective, Sandhya.
Bhavani, but I must tell you, this journey of Avatar would have actually been incomplete had we not had the pleasure of having you on board. And for those of us in the audience, who do not know about Bhavani Balasubramanian's background, I am absolutely proud and delighted to, speak a little bit about who she really is. Bhavani is a chartered accountant with 4 decades of audit experience, and that includes 23 years as partner of Deloitte and 4 years of overseas live experience. She has had extensive experience in auditing a variety of clients, including listed companies, multinationals in different industries, both in India and abroad. But the beauty of Bhavani's background and her personality is not just the fact that she is such an expert, such a nationally acclaimed expert in the space of audit, but the fact that she also led the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda for Deloitte. And as the person that was responsible for creating that discipline within Deloitte and for having actually ensured that the organization rose to become one of the top 10 best companies for women in India, Bhavani is so uniquely placed to combine this rigor and experience in auditing to the practice of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So all I can just say is that it's such an amazing moment that we have all of those absolutely brilliant aspects coming together in the form of Bhavani leading the diversity evaluation stream at Avatar and also being absolutely instrumental in bringing the 2 levels of ISO certification to the Indian market. The first level being the Avatar Certified Diversity Auditor, and the second one being the Avatar Certified Inclusive Organization, both of which utilize the ISO framework in order to ensure that the individual is first trained and is completely given all the tools and techniques in order to create that kind of an inclusive organization, and then he or she goes on to their organization and is able to create that change and result in the organization proudly getting certified as an ISO certified, ISO 30415 certified organization and an Avatar certified inclusive employer. So, Bhavani, I just want you, to share a few thoughts on how you feel about bringing these 2 exceptional products to the Indian market and facilitating organizations in their journey. A few words from you, please.
Soundarya, many a time I used to wonder, with my profile being so diverse and my whole journey, you would definitely endorse that we all did not have the intentional career pathing learning in Avatar in our days. So I took all those opportunities which came my way. And sometimes when you keep wondering what has been your purpose, I think today I have the answer with Destiny and Almighty God that all this experience has to definitely serve a purpose. And probably that is the ISO initiative which we would like to pioneer. So looking at some of my experiences from the technical perspective, I have been an audit and assurance partner, and audit is part of my DNA, and authenticity is something which comes naturally. Compliance with systems and conformity with procedures has been a forte for me because I have been handling Sarbanes-Oxley compliances and the UK framework and the COSO, internal control compliances, in my audits for over 2 decades. And I've also been the audit and assurance learning leader, not a very popular role because people would hesitate to come for learning, but that has helped me to develop the curriculum and deliver the curriculum and also readjust and adapt the curriculum based on feedback because it is all related to adult learning. And therefore, simulation and all those aspects, the journey of having changing learning platforms, changing learning techniques has had a valuable experience for me to try and see how we can make things interesting for people. The next aspect is I have been in another unpopular role as a peer reviewer, benchmarking my colleagues and practitioners, both in Deloitte and under the auspices of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And that has given a lot of insight into what is ideal and what is practical and what is the roadmap which will be constructive for people to follow. And I'm sure that that is something which is a skill which many auditors would probably think about, in their journey as they mature. Looking at my role on DEI, right from conception, creation, as you mentioned, and also strategizing, synthesizing, and finally symbolizing DEI for Deloitte India was my entire journey in that 4-year tenure. And it was a very satisfying journey to make my awareness and deep understanding of DEI really get into my heart. And therefore, I believe that the process of review of systems and practices and evaluating all this against DEI benchmarks and following the global matrices and arriving at the requirements for a global scorecard from the India practice would be useful in designing the course for our participants.
Got it. And it is so amazing to hear you articulate your own journey, which seems to have, like you said, whether intentionally or not, brought you to a level of expertise, professionalism, authenticity, and just the sheer robustness of not only thinking something through, but being able to actually implement it. And I think that's the beauty of the work that you lead at Avatar today, Bhavani, in terms of being the chief strategist, diversity evaluation. And all I can say is to everyone out there watching today and being part of the Power of I, I'd like you to visit www.avatarinc.com. That's avtarinc.com/ISO certifications. That is ISO certifications. Visit that link and you will get details about the 2 certification products which we are currently putting together for you. So we will be making an announcement with regard to the first batch of the Avatar Certified Diversity Auditor course. And let me assure you that with Bhavani at the helm, it is going to be one of the most robust, extremely rigorous courses, at the end of which you will know what exactly you will need to do in order to build the diversity, equity, and inclusion systems of any organization, whether you are an individual consultant or you are the diversity lead of a company or you are the HR head or you're just somebody in management who wishes to know the power of this standard, the ISO 30415 standard, then all you need to do is to visit that link. And I'll repeat it here for you again. It's www.avatarinc.com/ISO certifications. And once you go to that link, you will be able to get a form which you can fill, and we will then reach out to you once the batch dates are ready. So with that, once again, I'd like to thank you, Bhavani, for this wonderful conversation. And I mean, it's always a pleasure talking to you about, I think, the two passions of your life, audit and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And here is an opportunity for the two to come together. What a beautiful marriage that is, Bhavani. So thank you so very much. Any closing remarks from you, please?
Yeah, it's wonderful to think about this initiative, and it, as you said, it's a real marriage of DEI and audit.
Yes.
And I eagerly look forward to this initiative taking shape and people finding it useful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have no doubts that it would be not just useful, it would be very thought-provoking. And it's going to be a real regular course, which means there will be assessments and there will be quizzes. And, those of us who are signing up for this, this is actually something like a vocational training. It means that you really learn not just the implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion in an organization, but also the framework, the way you can structure it, and then how you can audit it in order to ensure that an organization truly becomes an ISO certified company with regard to diversity, equity, and inclusion. With that, I'd like to say that it's been fantastic talking about the ISO standard with all of you. And please do let us know your thoughts. You're welcome to share all details, about your organization and yourself, if you're interested in pursuing this course. And I'd also like to say that we will have Bhavani at the Avatar booth at the Power of I for a few minutes from now. So if you would like to ask her any questions, you'd like to ask her anything about, the ISO 30415 standard, then feel free to drop into the Avatar booth at the Power of I, and you can, have a quick chat with her. Thank you once again. And it's absolutely wonderful to bring you this latest initiative from Avatar. Thank you.
Thank you, friends.